And welcome everybody to the newest episode of the Amateur Theory Podcast. We got Adam once again making a return guest spot. So
right.
today's going to be a good episode. We got a movie discussion. I'm thinking about ending things. And then, but before that, as we like to do, we're going to talk about a couple items in the news, starting with something that made me really excited as a James Bond fan. So there was it's a rumor, but it's a rumor that Tom Hardy, probably most famous for Mad Max Fury Road, I think,
Well, he's
might.
been in a lot of stuff,
He's in
so
a lot of stuff, but that's his most recently big movie, I think.
really, wasn't that like 2014?
I don't know. I'm not up on my Tom Hardy news.
Okay.
But the rumor is he might be the next James Bond. So obviously, new James Bond coming out. This is going to be the fifth Daniel Craig one, and it seems like every one after the third was supposed to be his last one, and it keeps on coming out. But I think this is it. This is going to be the truly the final one. I'm really excited for this new James Bond, but it is fun to talk about who the next one was going to be. I know for a while people were wondering if it was going to be Idris Elba, but now he's getting a little old, so I guess Tom Hardy is the new person in talks. Is that would you guys be happy with a someone like that, or would you prefer maybe like a no-name actor who doesn't have like the baggage of previous characters on them?
Well, traditionally, the Bond role's always gone to, I think, less no-name actors. And then the fact that they're James Bond is what propels them to the spotlight. But I do quite like Tom Hardy. He's a very good actor, and I think he could pull off James Bond very well. And I don't know how.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you
Or I
off.
was just gonna say I don't know how much the fact that he's already like quite well known would affect his standing as the character. Like I don't know if that's that big of a factor.
Yeah, I know that I guess Pierce Brosnan was in Remington Steele, but I mean that was a much smaller role than James Bond. But what I was going to ask was, has Tom Hardy been in any kind of James Bond type roles? I'm sure he has. I just can't think of what that might be.
I mean, he was in Inception.
Yeah, he's in
kind of spy thriller-ish.
Sort of. I don't know.
Nothing like with the magnetism or the charisma that kind of role would require. I mean, he's charismatic, but I mean, like, there's nothing like that kind of lane, that kind of secret agent, charismatic. I don't know. It would be a new thing to see him in that role.
Do you think? I think if it is Tom Hardy, that is like a signal that it'll continue with like this more serious James Bond. I think the Daniel Craig movies have been getting progressively sillier as they go on, and based on what I've heard about this newest one, this is supposed to be the silliest one yet, which I'm okay with. I like classic Bond too, so I'm all about it. I've been watching a lot of the Pierce Brosnan Bonds recently, but Tom Hardy doesn't strike me. Although it's not to say it's impossible; he could play a more comedic role. But
I mean, he was in the Venom movie, right? Which I never saw, but
was the Venom supposed to be a comedy? That was supposed to be serious, right? It just was bad.
It is, a hero movie. Here's the thing. I did a little bit of digging into this, and I do want to emphasize the rumor aspect of this. Apparently, his name was the big rumor name like a year or two ago. So apparently this happens in waves. So I wouldn't put too much stock in this yet, but I'd like to see a little bit more confirmation before I start to kind of really see him in the role or connect him to the role. But yeah, fun to speculate.
Yeah, if you guys, and we'll end with this, if you guys could just pick James Bond, like an actor, is there someone you have in mind? It'd be like, this person would be really cool.
off the top of my head, no. This I would need to like make a list.
I know
do some
Cavill
mathematical
has
equations.
been talked about before.
Henry Cavill?
Yeah, he's been mentioned. Obviously, Tom Hardy. Idris Elba is getting older, but I mean, that would have been a cool Bond for sure, I think.
Well, I've seen him don a British accent for Alone. What is it? Um, it's the Holmes movie on Netflix about Sherlock Holmes' sister.
Enola Holmes.
Holmes. Yeah, I saw that. It was actually really good. But he plays Sherlock Holmes in that role. Yeah, I could see it after seeing that. Before, I could never have pictured it, but.
Do you know who would I think would be actually could do it well? Would be I'm blanking on his name. The new Batman.
Robert Pattinson?
Yeah.
Pattinson?
Like, I think he could do it. I wouldn't have said that except for I just saw him in Tenet. And that like screamed James Bond to me. Like him in that role. And so I think it could work. I'd also be totally cool. In fact, I might even prefer to get some no-name person I've never heard of. Because it is just kind of cool when you just, associate this one person with like, that's James Bond. You don't need to worry about, oh, he's this and that. It's just that's Bond. So that could be, I don't know. Probably my preference, I guess. Pick an unknown guy. Someone I've never heard of. The more obscure, the better. But okay. We won't spend too much time on this because it is just speculation. But another thing that I wanted to bring up, this is kind of related to movies. So Quibi is an app that, if you haven't heard of it, does 10-minute segments. And part of the reason I'm bringing it up is, one, it's been in the news because it got a lot of hoopla, a lot of early on investment, and they're already trying to sell it. It's been out thing for like 6 months. It won like an Emmy for one of its things, but no one is using it. And we were actually going to do an episode on a Quibi movie, which I did watch, actually, so I'll talk a little bit about it. But we ended up not doing it just because JL was not able to download Quibi in Korea. I guess it's not available there.
Yeah, you just can't download it like at all. It's not available on the App Store.
So I'm assuming I'm the only one who's used Quibi here. I'm guessing you haven't done it, Adam.
No, I went to the site for the first time. I've seen the ads. But I went on the site for the first time, and on that page it shows like what shows are available, and some examples of their marquee shows include Barkitecture, about making houses good for your dog, and About Face, and Agua Donkeys. Maybe some of these are good, but like it looked like their big the movie that was like most prominent on their page that wasn't made just for Quibi, I think, is Die Hard.
Yeah. Which I had no interest in, but
so my point is that I'm not even on the free trial train with this selection at this point. So I mean, I remember reading the article, and it said that apparently people, they have low rates of people trying the free trial and lower rates of people on the free trial like
sticking around.
So
as someone on a free trial right now, and I did watch an entire Quibi movie, which was When the Streetlights Go On, which, you know what, I was expecting to just totally hate it, but I didn't. It wasn't like enormously original. It was like a Daria meets a murder mystery, be the best way I could describe it. But it was charming. It was a charming kind of like 90s throwback movie. And
you had to watch it on your phone, right?
Yes.
In 10-minute segments?
In 10-minute segments.
That's
what I want to get at.
The experience.
No. It was not at all how I wanted to watch it. So that's what I wanted to get at. I think they miscalculated. So Quibi is going for like the YouTube audience. They kind of have the same idea in their head, or the TikTok audience, like people who are watching like short videos. The thing that they fundamentally miscalculated, I think, is the way that they imagine people use those services is that they are like, if they have a couple minutes to spare, like they're waiting in line, that's literally what the ads show, like people waiting in line and being like, oh, let's do a short, YouTube video. But I watch YouTube all the time. I never do that. Like if I'm online, YouTube is not what I'm doing. I am, like scrolling Facebook or like Reddit or something, which I think is what everybody does. If I'm watching YouTube, I'm at home watching YouTube. Like it's a very different. I mean, and then the Quibi is even worse because the short videos you're watching are not self-contained. So it's not like I can't imagine watching this movie. And like it was like a movie, just like broken up, and they tried their darndest to make them like episode-ish. And there is some ones that work better than others, some 10-minute segments that ended on a cliffhanger, and it's like, okay, it was kind of like an episode. But some of them just end really abruptly, and you're just like, well, I guess I got to watch an ad before I can see the next episode. That's fun. It's just.
Well, it's like watching a movie on TV with the commercial breaks.
You know what? It's like that.
Some of those have
to watch
very
it on a tiny
abrupt.
phone. Yeah. The one cool thing about Quibi, which is kind of I don't know how useful this technology is. I think it's kind of, but it's novel. It's like kind of fun. Is that when you turn it from vertical to horizontal, like a YouTube video, if you watch it vertically, it just minimizes the widescreen so that it doesn't look very good. But Quibi, I guess everything they film in both aspect ratios.
Interesting.
So it's cool in that you can watch it however you want. It's a little less cool because it makes it so that scenes can't be too busy, because they always have to be like structured in a way that it would look good in both angles, which means in widescreen you have a lot of empty space, and in like full in the longer view you always just have like, the head is at the top of the screen and you have like a body shot of people talking. But it is very seamless, so props to that. That's cool, I guess. Honestly, maybe Quibi would be okay if it was free, but the fact that they're making people pay for this is just outrageous. I mean, there's no way I'm sticking with it. Even as someone who liked the content, I want you to get rid of the 10-minute thing. Just put them up as a movie, and then maybe we'll talk. Maybe.
Yeah, like how does this at all like compete with something like Netflix? Because you can also watch Netflix on your phone, right? But
Yeah.
Netflix has a much more extensive library that has like newer stuff that people are interested in, plus older material that people already like. And you don't have ads. You can just watch the whole thing.
Yeah, if you don't have a show, if you don't have like the show to come to your service to watch, then I don't think your service has a chance. It's like if you go to Netflix, there are things you can see that people want to see, like your Stranger Things or even more recent shows, like Umbrella Academy, who's popular recently, right? So, and I can think of that for like all of the major streaming services, and I don't know any of Quibi's shows. So if there isn't something that I'm looking forward to on it, then I'm never going to try or thing.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, they did get some Emmy nods, and they actually won one. But I can't remember the name of the one that won the Emmy, which is not a good sign for Quibi. But yeah, like whoever thought of that idea in the first place, just it was a bad idea. It wasn't done well. YouTube is cool because you can do the little short videos, but there's also like hour-long stuff on YouTube. There's lots of variety there. By like locking in, like we only do 10-minute content. That's it. We don't offer anything. No like 30-second little goofy things. No, if you want to watch this a full movie, that's not an option. No, you're locked in to this Quibi amount. They try to make it like a noun. It's a Quibi. It's a unit of time. Like, okay, like you're just limiting yourself, and you're making all your content worse. Like it's an unnecessary restriction, and there was no reason for it. Not a real reason. So sad thing. It looks like maybe it'll get bought by somebody, or maybe it'll just go under. We'll see. But all right, now moving on to the meat of the episode. We all watched the movie. I'm thinking about ending things. This is Kaufman directed. It was weird. That was my thoughts. but
as
we'll
Kaufman is wont to do with his movies.
We will start with the spoiler-free review. If everyone just wants to go around, just kind of top line, how did you feel about it? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
Well, I think it's the most pretentious movie I've ever liked. This is how I would put it.
That's not where I expected you to end that sentence with. But.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I can't even think of like 5 movies that have come out this year, but this is probably my favorite movie of 2020 so far. I mean, I can understand the adjective pretentious being applied to this film. It is quite esoteric, surreal, abstruse, and very uncomfortable at times, but ultimately still very engaging. At least I thought. I was quite into the dialogue. I think the acting is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And I kind of like the surreal thing. I just kind of like. I was always guessing where this movie was going. Sort of.
That's fair, and I think that part of it is that it's not so much it being surreal that was pretentious. It's that and I don't think this is a spoiler. It's front loading information through conversations. Okay, and it's like they just talk about it. They just talk about these kind of pretentious ideas a little bit, right? But the movie does act on those ideas. It does. But it's kind of like a weird little balancing act. Fortunately, I feel like the prose was in the dialogue was engaging enough. The ideas were interesting enough that it's okay. I could sit with these people and hear them hash out their life philosophy. Okay, that's fine. But ultimately, I mean, this was a movie that put the ideas first and made everything happen in order to accommodate the ideas. And again, I liked this movie. I think that given that that's what they were doing, the potential for disaster there was pretty great, and I liked it at the end. I thought it was good.
Okay, just curious. Have either of you read the book, or were either of you like aware of the book before going?
I was aware of the book.
And did you know about like what the book was about before you saw the movie?
No.
I knew absolutely nothing about this movie except for the fact that Charlie Kaufman made it, and that alone was enough to get me interested. Actually, when I first heard the title, I thought it was in reference to the main character wanting to kill herself and not actually end a relationship. But as I kept watching the movie, I was like, oh, I had the wrong idea.
I think it kind of dabbled into. Well, I think it dabbled into both. It was kind of like a double meaning.
I think there's a double entendre.
But I'll just say, straight off the bat, I think of the 3 of us, I liked it the least. I would agree that the acting was phenomenal, and if it hadn't been, I would have disliked the movie because I thought pretentious was a pretty good word as a way to describe this movie in a lot of parts, and it even kind of I won't say it now, but there was a meta moment in the movie.
The movie was so fond of talking about itself and its
medium. And they even like admitted it.
Oh, that was still right.
But the thing is like, to me, admitting or being self-aware of something doesn't make it not that. But regardless, I thought there was the main issues I had with the movie were that I think there were certain scenes that just stretched on too long. They just needed to be shortened. And then I just did not care at all for the ending. Just not at all. I just thought it was, I felt it was a cop-out in place of a real ending. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler. But yeah, that's And then I didn't hate it. Like I wasn't bored, right? It was certainly like things happening all the time. So there was, it kept your interest. There was like JL. I was very very curious about, like trying to solve the mystery of the movie. I also didn't know anything about it going in, but I was curious if I felt like if I had read the book, I would have liked the movie a lot more because it was after I was confused at the end. Like I watched the entire movie and I came out like kind of confused. And so I read the Wikipedia synopsis of the movie, didn't solve anything for me. So then I read the Wikipedia synopsis of the book and I was like, okay, now I'm starting to piece this together, what it was trying to be, what it was trying to do. I wish it had been more faithful to this story because this seems
Yeah,
way
I've
better.
heard Kaufman actually changed quite a bit from the original novel.
If you haven't watched this movie and you have read the book, you should know going in because I've looked into this as well. They are very different. The pieces are there, the beginning pieces, but Kaufman does different things with them.
You could tell this was his.
Yeah,
It was like the director's vision. It was very loosely based off a story that was just a vehicle to express his ideas about things, life.
Right.
Which, when I was reading about Kaufman, this is the first movie I've ever seen by him. Apparently, that's a common theme in a lot of his movies. So, and that's like a continuous themes about like just very esoteric kind of questions that get asked and answered to various degrees.
Yeah.
But, all right.
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That's his, I think.
Yeah, I have seen that, but I know he didn't direct that.
Yeah,
But he wrote it.
Which I think the direction is an important part of this movie, but the writing is also just as important, and I think you can get kind of a sense a little bit.
You know what? I will say that I'm not. I think that JL is better at like identifying good cinematography than I am, but I did get I appreciated what I saw. There was some interesting shots and things, and it did a really good job of making you feel uncomfortable and unsettled.
Yes, because
Like
the
a
movie's
very good
aspect
job.
ratio is in a 4:3, so you're always feel like very like kind of tight and close with these characters, and the entire time, just everyone's kind of subtly going off the deep end. There is a fantastic dinner scene in this movie. That is so awkward yet hilarious and tense, and it's amazing.
Well, I've got a question for you all. Where would you place the genre of this film?
See, at first I thought it was going to be horror, but it wasn't.
I think this movie is horror adjacent. Yeah.
But see, well, I won't say any. I'll save it for the spoiler section. I want to get into.
I think
Why I do not think
Wikipedia
it's
called it
horror.
a psychological drama.
Okay.
Sure.
Interesting.
I mean, it's like what genre would you put a movie like Eraserhead in or Mulholland Drive? Like it's
Fair enough.
it's just weird, man.
They often put that movie in the horror lists, and I'm like, horror must not be as big of a genre as it should be. But yeah, sounds interesting.
Well, okay. Well, this is the end of the spoiler-free section. We're going to get into spoilers. If you have not seen this movie and don't want it spoiled, pause it here, watch the movie, come back. But okay, I would have said this was horror, except for the ending undercut. I can't even tell you how much I disliked the ending. I really, really did not like it. It was this musical thing that just it was kind of visually interesting on its own, but was a total tonal shift from the entire rest of the movie. Answered zero of the questions that you were building up the entire thing. Like I said, I had to read the Wikipedia of the book to get anything about that. The biggest spoiler of all, the girl and the guy are the same person, or that the girl is like a figment of the guy's imagination.
Right.
That's like the big reveal. But I did not get that by the end. I didn't understand that was what they were going. I had an inkling that maybe one of them was a made up character and wasn't real. They alluded that the girl and the guy like had the picture that was the same and like was painting each other's pictures and stuff, but it just was not made clear at all. And so I just felt very unsatisfied by the end. That is very unsatisfied.
I wouldn't say it's totally like tonally off. In fact, I think that he
Well, it's
foreshadowed.
toning on by being weird, I guess. But that's the only connecting dots to me.
So one of the early like ideas that were being introduced, I'd like to point out that half this movie is a discussion in a car.
Right.
Yeah.
Those were the things that needed to be cut. They were way too long, and they went on and on.
So they go through like a laundry list of related ideas in this car, right? And all of it is relevant to what happens, which I think is good because the things that do happen are interesting, but they also needed to be grounded by the philosophy that they were talking about in order for it to mean anything to me.
Okay, I appreciated the fact that at the very beginning they set it up when they were saying that like what is real and what's a story and what's a movie are all like you lose yourself in it, and then that was brought up again and again.
Yeah,
in some interesting scenes, and like the time movement and stuff was interesting. But then I think that they got that message across, and then they just beat it to death. Like they just kept on hammering that home over and over and over with the conversations. And again, they were just really, really long, and I didn't feel like they were saying anything new. It was just repeating, and maybe it needed to be repeated because it wasn't obvious at first. Maybe if it had been shorter, I wouldn't have noticed, and then it would have been lost on me. Maybe that was, or maybe there was more being said that I just didn't pick up on. Like I said, I didn't really get it.
It's impossible to pick up on everything. Like these guys were writing a thesis together, and I guess they're the same person. So this person was writing a thesis in his mind, and like you'd have to watch it again to go to the details. And while I do like this film, I thought it was good. It's not a movie I would want to watch again. So those details are lost to me forever. Sorry. But here's the thing is that early on they talk about how like only thoughts are real. All right. And then they also talk about how the lie of cinema, the lie of like media that you're talking about, but then they don't just talk about it, they do it. And we see this especially with when the janitor is watching the about the waiter and her boyfriend.
Yeah, and I'm saying those were the cool scenes is when stuff was happening.
And then like I said,
they weren't just talking about it.
And that, but I think that what that does is specifically in terms of the ending, and what that did is it established that the theater that is being played for us is whatever the mind wants to put out there. And we know that the janitor character is the boy, and also that he is enamored with Oklahoma, the play. And so it would make sense that by the end, we do away completely with the pretense of like what is real and what is not. Instead, we're just looking at his thoughts. We're just thinking of like, what is he imagining? What is he imagining himself as? What is he imagining? What is the thought that he wants to think of himself as he goes out? I just feel like it made sense that it goes off the rails at the end because we've done away with the pretense, you know. I don't know. It works.
When you put it that way, it doesn't sound as bad as I made it out to be. Maybe.
Was it him singing at the end that lost you?
I did not like that. No, I did not.
Well, yeah. Well, the movie is like just filled to the brim with like references and allusions to other like pieces of work, literature or film-wise, and I think a lot of it is that in the scene where the young woman goes into Jake, that's the name of the male character. She goes into his room. It's his childhood room, and we see basically the camera focuses on like he has like all these books and DVDs and whatnot. And I kind of get a sense that because in the late he frames things through these like pieces of art. Like they're always like either quoting poetry or talking about a movie, or he's singing a literal song from a musical to represent, I guess, maybe his feeling state or how he experiences things.
Mhm.
Like, there's that one scene where they're talking about the Cassavetes film, A Woman Under the Influence, and the young woman, Lucy Ames, her name keeps changing throughout the film. I think she quotes verbatim a Pauline Kael review. And she's even like smoking. She has a cigarette all
I
of a
remember
sudden.
That was the
she
meta moment I was
adopted an
talking about.
accent.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a little while later, her face literally changes when she quotes another piece of media. I'm trying to remember what that media was. But yeah, absolutely. I thought that was really entertaining to watch that.
Yeah, but earlier in the movie, you see a Pauline Kael like book in his room, so it's like, oh, this is how he's, I guess, kind of taking in this conversation about this film.
Yeah.
It's in the form of something he's already maybe like read or experienced.
Mm.
Sure, but there's one scene in particular that this isn't the only example of this, but it sticks out to me as like emblematic of the issue I had.
Mm.
So they're getting ice cream, right? And at the very end, the girl tells the fictional girl, like, watch out, you're in danger, or something like that.
Mm.
Was the danger some esoteric thing in his mind, or like it made it sound as if there was like some real threat that was going to? It was like a foreshadowing, but it foreshadowed nothing. Again, just like kind of a empty just dialogue that I felt like was really common in this film, or the connection to whatever psychological thing in his head and that scene are so out there and esoteric that like it's just not. I wasn't able to comprehend it. And maybe I'm just too dumb for this movie. Maybe that's what it is in the end of the day. But I don't. I say that facetiously. But like it's just those kind of things. Like there was multiple moments where they kind of played up the horror aspect, but then the horror doesn't connect to the theme of this is all in his head. Like he's just making stuff. He's talking about his feelings. I mean, maybe he's feeling horror-ish. He's feeling scared. I guess maybe there's something there. Maybe it makes sense if you think that the girl isn't telling the girl that, she's telling Jake that. She's saying, I worry for you. You don't have to go forward in time. But it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, he kind of does. Is he thinking a character is telling him he doesn't have to, but he does? It's all just bizarre. I don't know. I'm confusing myself just by talking about it.
It is true that, like, I mentioned before that this is a movie that I'm sure would reward repeat viewings, and I don't want to.
Yeah, it absolutely demands repeat viewings, pretty much.
Yeah, because I like the reality is that I can't recall details that might answer your questions. Like there's so many things that pass me by. I think that it's true that even like the whole concept of this girl, like discovering things seems baffling to me, given that it's him. Like, how do you explain that film world in the form line? Maybe you don't need to, or maybe that it's there, and again, details that pass you by. They talk very quickly, they show things very quickly, and I don't know.
But that bothers me in movies when like that's where I draw the pretentious thing. Like if you're so esoteric and like out there, that we talked about this a little bit with Showgirls, that like if your message is so out there and so like just need to connect the dots that nobody gets it, was it a good point? I would say no. I'd say there was a failure of communication, that you weren't able to like communicate your idea effectively. And I'm partially reason I'm being so critical is just to be a foil to you guys. Like I said, I didn't mind this movie. But I do kind of have a problem with those kind of things where it's like, oh, if you didn't watch it 7 times, you didn't really get it. And like, oh, well then that's, like 2001 is like deep, but I got it on the first time I watched it. Like, not that I understood the whole thing, but like I was able to fully appreciate the movie. And I guess you guys are saying that JL, you said it's your favorite movie of the year, and you only saw
well, and I also mean that I've only seen like 4 movies that have come out this year. I don't know. It's, out of those 4 movies I've seen, I think this is my favorite one so far. I mean, but this is the thing. I said it's probably my favorite of the movie of the year so far. But I'd be lying if I said I got this movie. At the end of the day, like so it's like this, like I don't need to fully have understood or gotten this movie just to like it. Like I said, the aspects, like the acting, the dialogue, just the cinematography, the events, that alone was enough for me to really appreciate this film. Like I liked all of that enough to just be okay with, like, not necessarily like understanding every single aspect about this movie. I like those elements enough that I was like, oh, I do want to watch this movie again. And if I do watch it again, I'd probably pick up on more of the somewhat more abstruse details or ideas.
Well, I think that we could pull. I think I could take away a general theme. I'm sure there are lots of details that went into this, again, flying by, but like I think there were kind of two sides to this essentially. The most prominent one to me is that there isn't anything about reality or anything about life that guarantees happiness or companionship. And I feel like so that's why they kept talking about like you kind of just feel like you're pushed along life, and realistically you can't just jump off the train, quote unquote, to borrow their own metaphor. So you're just kind of pushed along in life, and there isn't anything that guarantees that you'll be appreciated in life, that you'll it's a kind of a grim thought. But the last thing that he leaves in his speech before he begins his musical number, which by the way, I do think it was very cool that like they had painted on like wrinkles to show they were really distinguished, but it's like so fake, and it's like so. I just thought that was artistic, and I thought that was cool. But one of the last lines he says is that the love that is in this life, that we get in this life, is what makes life tolerable, or right, because there isn't like. We aren't guaranteed, like people won't appreciate you for what you've done. People aren't going to be friends with you just because. So I mean, I think there was a theme, and I think it was conveyed through this events. But like, I think there were, I don't know. It is. I am very skeptical of making definitive statements about anything in this movie. It feels like this is the kind of movie that punishes you for making definitive statements. So I'm just saying that in a general sense, I feel like that's kind of maybe what I got.
Yeah, it's a Kaufman movie. Like I was kind of expecting something like this. Like, have either of you seen Synecdoche, New York?
I have
No,
not.
so I've never seen any of the stuff he directed. So I'm looking into that, but I'm guessing is it somewhat similar to this?
Yeah, it's one of those movies where after it's over, you're like, what? I might have to watch that again.
Yeah, I do wonder that if the book, because I mean the book sounded really interesting. I guess I have spoiled it, so maybe it wouldn't be as good in that regard. That like the big twist has been ruined. But it's too bad because it's an interesting idea. I guess it's kind of been done before. It's kind of what Fight Club is, a more traditional movie about an imaginary character.
Yeah.
But like I just think that this movie could have been such, like if you just cut out the second half of the movie and then completely change the ending so there's like a murderer in the basement. This would have been an excellent horror movie, like an excellent horror movie. And I guess maybe part of the reason I didn't like the ending is because I was setting myself up for that. Like the beginning where like the parents, that was totally my favorite part of the movie.
It was certainly
ominous. People were just slowly going crazy. And like that, to me, I'm a huge horror fan, so I was getting really excited. I was like, oh, this is getting good. Like, oh, this is crazy. And then it's like, all right, we're going to leave the house and then just talk about stuff for next hour until we sing at the end, and then that'll be the end of the movie. And so like, again, maybe it was because at the beginning I'd set myself up expecting something different, but I almost feel like they invited that. Like it was an intentional thing that they were doing that. And so I don't know if it was such like that meta moment where like they were doing their, and I know it was a quoted review of some other thing, but it just fit this movie so well. Like every single criticism they had was like some of the stuff racing through my mind as I watched it. And then I saw them say that, and I was like, oh, snap. Maybe they're going to stop doing that stuff. They realize that they're doing it, they'll stop. But that's not what happened. I don't know, like I by the second half, the second leg of the movie, you know, I said that the movie was engaging, and there were scenes that were engaging, but I was getting bored at certain parts in the car.
Yeah, the movie is like 2 hours and 14 minutes. It is kind of long, and I can understand it testing someone's patience. It probably could have been edited down a little bit, but at the same time, there's some movies I really like are just people talking and nothing happens. I actually kind of like that.
I love Reservoir Dogs. Like, I think that can be done really, really well. I guess I just prefer when I am able to follow the conversation fully and don't feel like I needed 3 watchings to do that. But I mean, that's just me, I guess.
No,
I'm being overly critical. I'm just, yeah.
Oh no, I could totally understand why someone would very much not like this film, and their opinion's valid. Like, this definitely isn't for everyone. It's not for dumb people, man.
No, I will say, because I've been criticizing this movie very heavily, I'm going to say everything that I really liked about it. The acting was superb, especially the lead woman, because she played like 4 different characters. Like, she kept on changing her personality, and each change was palpable yet felt connected to the previous personality in a very real way, and she played them all very well. Like, she went from like this kind of uncaring girlfriend to this people pleaser to this like tell it how it is kind of girl, and then finally to like this like broken person by the very end. And again, every single personality shift felt natural. Natural is the wrong word. It felt naturally unnatural. Like it made sense in the context of the movie, but it was very unsettling. Like everyone's transformation was, which was great. I loved all that bit. I loved the parents were incredible.
Yes, I love how Toni Collette just basically plays the mom from Hereditary again in this movie.
Basically.
I don't know. I feel like the mom from Hereditary was a lot more put together than this. It's like, I just remembering when the father is like made a joke, and then Toni Collette's character laughs from the other side of the house. Like, it's like, I felt like she had a more unhinged role in this, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I really liked her, and then the father was good too. He played the straight man, but like
about as straight as a straight man can get in this movie.
Yeah. He was a really good foil to the mother, because if they had both just been completely bonkers, I think it would have undercut something. It made their relationship feel real, and then it just made it so much more that the mother was clearly, you know, in the depths of dementia or something. Yeah, and then the constantly changing stories was fun. How, like, you know, they kept on saying how they met kept on changing, and like stuff like that. That was all really cool. They did that. It was very ominous. The basement with the scratch marks, and then there was a dog, and there wasn't a dog, and it was like, oh snap. And so it was a lot of stuff, and then it really made you, you know, especially when things really started at the end of that house. You know, there was so many questions that like you just wanted to have answered, like so many things you were just wondering. And again, that's we're not answered.
And it doesn't really get answered.
Not really.
Not in a traditional sense, at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, once, because you can kind of, to me, saying that it's all in his head is very akin to the ending being like, and it was all a dream. You know, it just undercuts everything you did, and it makes it so like, oh, anything could be possible if it's just he made it up. You know, like there's
Right,
no
but
rules.
that seems like
so,
just
it's
too
okay.
simple of an explanation. That's not like the be all end all, right? It's like, oh, it was just all in his head. Like,
But
Well,
kind of like so many, again, it's tough because if I say that, you're like, well, you know, if you watched it 5 times, you might be able to pick up this other thing but like, isn't that the kind of the explanation of everything?
well,
Like, isn't that if we're boiled down, like what it is that this was all just kind of like a fantasy hay fever dream of this person who is a janitor who's naked in his car?
yeah. Here's the thing. This is, and this is why I think that maybe this movie gets a pass, is because it's often the problem with that thing is that it causes a separation between what happened, what the characters go through, and then what actually happens. But the story is him. What he's going through is the story. Do you see what I mean? So I feel like it's okay to say it's all just him because who he is, us learning about him, is the story. You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm forgiving of that circumstance in this case. A bit.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how convincing I am. You guys are making me rethink some things, and maybe I appreciate a little bit more after the context of this conversation. I don't know if you guys feel worse about it after me talking about it. I don't know, but regardless, it was
Sure.
it was. I would say that as long as you are cool with weird movies, you know, if it's like if you're interested in totally like off the wall kind of cinema, then you know, give this a watch. It's definitely nothing like it might not have been my favorite movie of this year. I think I actually liked the Quibi movie a little bit more, but it was certainly it's certainly memorable. It's certainly
Oh, yeah.
memorable. I have not seen anything like this ever. Maybe I need to watch Synecdoche and then get kind of a. But this is kind of its own animal in a way that I can't. I'm trying to think of another example of something similar to this. The closest I can think of is 2001, and that they're not really comparable movies.
Have
Not
you
really.
all heard of Jacob's Ladder?
Yeah, I've seen that. It's been a
No,
while, but
This is Jacob's Ladder is the movie that came to mind. The person I was watching with she said that it reminded her of an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. If you've read the short story or watched the Twilight Zone adaptation of that, so if you want kind of like to, I mean, chances are if you're hearing this, then you've probably watched the video. But if you want a kind of a version of this kind of story that's like much more simple, much more focused, I would maybe recommend checking either of those out, and you kind of get a sense of what this movie is going for.
And I will say, if you were like me and watched the first half and were like, awesome horror setup, and then didn't get the payoff, Babadook is kind of the first half of this movie with that horror payoff. That's kind of what that movie is. So, love Babadook. Would definitely suggest that to anybody. But you know, this is cool. You know, I didn't hate this. I'm happy I watched it. It was definitely an interesting experience.
yeah, no, I'd definitely rather watch, you know, something like this. Even ultimately, if someone thinks like this movie's a failure, it's still much more interesting than say like Mulan 2020.
And I will give it credit. This is probably real deeper than Tenet. Tenet was like fake deep in a lot of ways. I loved Tenet, like I really, really did. But I don't know if you. My assumption, I mean, I only saw it once, but my guess is if you saw that movie 3 times, you would just find a lot of plot holes, probably. It was the sense I got. But, you know, it's not to undercut it. I think that movie did not rely on its crazy explanations in the way this one did. That kind of was more of just an action movie that had some, you know, pseudoscience stuff thrown in to explain away some things that didn't make a lot of sense. But okay, we are. I don't want to go too long, but there is something that I've been wanting to do, like a segment I've been wanting to try out, which is just. And I'm ripping this straight from GameScoop, the IGN podcast. I'll just admit it. They have a thing at the end they usually do, or it's actually they'll do it at the beginning. It doesn't matter. They'll just make what am I playing? So this is this is going to be a what are you watching? If there's anything interesting that and the answer to maybe you're reading a book or something. Who knows? It doesn't have to be whatever it is that you're doing that maybe we're not going to do a full episode on, but if you just kind of want to touch on it, if you thought it was something worth mentioning, this is the time. I'll start. I've been watching the 36 Chambers trilogy, which I haven't read that Wu-Tang's 36 Chambers album is based off of it, but I just assume it is. It's got a similar title. It's Kung Fu. Awesome. Yeah. I'm just super about these movies. The first one's more serious. Second one's a comedy. But I love this genre in general. I just, like 80s, 90s Kung Fu films I just am obsessed with. And so this has just been a blast. It's exactly what you think it is, just a lot of crazy kung fu action. It's great, and the second one's pretty funny actually. It's a comedy, and I would say it's pretty. It holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I've seen the first one, which is I know a classic, and I really liked. I didn't know it was an entire trilogy.
That's right. I actually haven't seen the third one yet, but I plan to finish the trilogy. All right, what about you guys?
Well, I saw The Lighthouse recently. Highly recommend. It is. I want to see that. Put it above Eggers' other film, The Witch. That still has a very special place in my heart. It's one of my very favorite horror films, and certainly the horror element is toned down in this film, but. Watch this movie to really simulate the sense of growing mad. It's a great period piece and great performances. Highly recommend it.
Yes, I would totally second that recommendation. One of the best movies from 2019. As for me, I don't know if I've watched anything this past week other than I'm thinking of ending things, but I did read an interesting novel called Severance by an author named Ling Ma, and it came out in 2018, and it kind of predicted COVID. It's about a big global pandemic.
Interesting.
But the novel basically follows a Chinese immigrant who grew up in the States and moves to New York to just work there. And while she's working at an office, a disease or virus from China starts making its way around the world and infecting everyone, and everyone has to start wearing masks and that kind of thing. And it's kind of half like zombie apocalypse, but the zombies are kind of weird, and half like just touching on like millennial angst and, like living in this hyper capitalist society. So yeah, I definitely give it a recommend. Very engaging read. You definitely won't be bored. Severance by Ling Ma.
All right, and with that, that's going to be it for us. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a comment. If you're watching us we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, and a bunch of others. Give us a follow so you'll get these weekly. And until next time.
Till next time, everybody.
See ya.